Okay, so let's go ahead and share the screen here. If I could remember where to do that. Oh, share. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, oh my goodness, I have so many tabs up. Here we go. Mm, mm. Okay, so I know that we have a couple different people. Um, so we're gonna start with Alex. Um, so at any point during readings, let me know, stop me if you have a question. I'm going to try and not overload anybody with information, but I'm going to let you know right now I have a lot of notes. Like I have 9 pages of notes, like for everybody, not just for one person. But do have a lot of notes, and so if you did want to take notes yourself, are absolutely fine to do that. This recording is obviously recorded, and so if you did want to come back and just watch it over again instead of taking notes, you can do that. But feel free to stop me if you have a question. Probably the best thing to do is just come on the mic and stop me. Because I might very well get too into the actual reading portion that I might not automatically see the chat. Like the chat bar will like pop up, but it's a 50-50 on how early I'll see it. And so the fastest way to get to me is to just come on the mic. Um, if that doesn't matter to you, then I'll just see it when I see it. Um, okay, so let's start with Alex. Oh, so another surprise. Sorry, I promise we're gonna get it started. So we are gonna cover um the transits for each person for what to expect, not only for the past Virgo lunar eclipse that just happened, but also the solar eclipse that's happening in Aries on the 29th of March. So next week. Yeah, next Saturday. So we're going to cover that too. So you'll have a good amount of information to kind of um, to look forward to, not just to like what you've already experienced. Even though the lunar eclipse has already happened, it's still kind of playing out because eclipses take at least 6 months to play out. So okay, Alex. So Alex is a Virgo rising, um, Sun in Sag, of course, and then Moon in Pisces. So when we're looking at the Virgo eclipse, first thing is obviously she's a Virgo rising, so this lunar eclipse is going to be in her first house. Mercury is the ruler of this eclipse, and so that eclipse that we just had, Mercury was direct in Aries. So it would have been in her eighth house, which is all about transformation, shared resources, debts. Um, and then we have a question. Oh, okay. Okay, got it. Thank you. Um, yeah, I try to make sure that everything is like visible. Okay, so yeah, so the ruler of the eclipse is going to be in her eighth house. So it'd be a big theme of this eclipse for her would be some sort of transformation, having to do with her identity, whether it be physical. It's more likely emotional. The eighth house is a water house, even though Aries is sitting there for her own personal chart. The eighth house has to do with a lot of like emotional stuff. It has to do with like our fears. It has to do with feeling overwhelmed. It does have to do with, I mean, like kind of like the ninth house has to do with that too. But the eighth house is more of like that fear or like feeling a bit triggered. Um, the eighth house can also be like debts, taxes, crisis, all of those things, all the fun things. And so when we look at what else Mercury is ruling over, we see that Mercury is also tied to her 10th house. So we've got all of those eighth house things being tied to the first house and the 10th house of career. So it's all about like essentially it's all about her job and changes that could potentially come from the job. Now, what I did notice, Alex, is that you're going through a bit of a prolonged Mars return. Your Mars return is about work. It's about where you putting your energy into. So it can be about actual career or like what are you doing as far as like work, whether it be physical or like career wise. Um, Mars was retrograde in Cancer, and it's been in Cancer for an ungodly amount of time. And so you've had a bit of a prolonged Mars return as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if you're starting to reevaluate some aspects of your job or career. I'm not saying that you'll change your job, but it just could be a simple fact of like trying to come to terms with whether or not you still resonate with certain aspects of your job. Like, do you have the same values? Hold on, we have a couple comments. Uh, you're in the middle of changing your job right now. Okay. Well, that's that Virgo eclipse. Um, Hold on, let me look at my notes here just so that I'm making sure that I'm staying on track. Because I can definitely easily get off track here because my mind just goes everywhere. So, all right. So yeah, personal identity shifts, self-image can definitely also come whenever we're looking at the 10th house. We're looking at not only career, but also how do we show up in the public? So whether that be like our literal self-image or our reputation, like physical, emotional renewal can also be something that comes up as well, since that eighth house is going to be tied into that first and 10th house influence. Mercury is the ruler, of course, and it's in the eighth house, like we were talking about. Um, with Mars being connected to Mercury and Aries, since I'm kind of taking your Mars return, but also connecting it, since Aries is ruled by Mars and you already have Mars in Cancer, and Mars is currently in Cancer, I just decided to connect the two. And so when we look at Mars being in Cancer and almost being like the ruler of almost like the ruler of the ruler in your case of this eclipse. We're also taking in some other themes that are surrounding like friendships, allies. It can even be like coworkers at work or, people that are there to support you at work, social circles. In specifically, it can be like long-term goals as well as compensation that you're getting from work. So there could be like some sort of like reevaluation about like asking yourself, okay, like the amount of work that I'm taking on, am I getting paid enough for that? Um, we can also think of it as like, I would just like a different pay. I need a different pay to actually sustain certain things because anytime we're talking about 10th house, we are in a sense talking about Capricorn energy, and Capricorn is going to think more so about long term. And so it's going to be, putting all of those things up against what are your long term goals, henceforth kind of triggering that transformation of identity and seeing if those two things match up. And if they don't, then they're going to need to come into some sort of meshing over the next 6 months. So if you do go through quite a few mentality changes in particular, because Mercury is in the eighth for you right now with this eclipse, it's more of a mental change or a mental shift. Um, like a different way of expressing yourself because you're thinking a bit differently about career and where you want to be in the next like 10 years, and then adjusting to be able to do that. Because Virgo is all about preparation for the future. It does think about the right now, but it's more so trying to plan for the future. And it does really well with that kind of 10th house energy that you're already kind of working with. Um, so I did want to also kind of come back to that extended Mars retrograde. So because Mars is still in Cancer right now, it's not retrograde, but you have natal retrograde, Mars retrograde in your chart in the 11th. We can see some past unresolved conflicts or initiatives related to group dynamics kind of like resurfacing. I could also see just like almost being like in a situation that's very reminiscent of a conflict that you've already been in before. Uh, I'm so glad it makes sense. Um, and then another thing I did want to point out while we're talking about Mars as well, for this eclipse, for the lunar eclipse, Venus retrograde was actually like conjunct um, Mercury in Aries. And so that adds another layer onto things. And so we're looking at reevaluating how you communicate in relationships with other people. Now, you might have some conflict with trying to kind of handle your own stuff. Um, and having kind of your own autonomy versus collaborating with other people. Um, it's possible to find balance, absolutely, but I'm just letting you know that could be like a little bit of friction there, like especially if people are asking you for a lot. Um, it'd be like, it could be like, I feel like I don't have enough time to do the things that I need to do to get to where I want to be. So that can be like revisiting past conversations or unresolved issues, like with friends, colleagues. I don't know if you have siblings, but if you have siblings, it could even like go to siblings as well. That same kind of like friction can come up with siblings too. Or another thing when I think about Venus retrograde conjunct Mercury retrograde would be like um, learning something new or like revisiting a possible like subject that maybe you put down before that was just very exciting. Um, Especially with Venus and Mercury in retrograde, it can, or not Venus and Mercury, Venus being retrograde conjunct Mercury in Aries, it can be like, oh, I remember if that I used to like, for example, I used to write poetry. I want to get back into that. That is something very like Venus, Mercury, like coupled. It gives the same kind of vibe. So reconsidering learning or writing projects that you might want to get back into and you feel the urge to kind of like redefine yourself in that way. Or just to redefine your voice, like we were talking about, how you communicate with other people and how you express yourself out to the world. And that can also have to do with like that reputation as well. Um, so wrapping up that lunar eclipse, just kind of some overall like things to note. Um, oh, I love that. Currently going back to an old career. And I loved, and I'm leaving Canada and trying to make more time for. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. Um, So some challenges just to look out for. I've kind of been saying them already, but frustration in expressing emotions to other people, especially if other people aren't holding space for your emotions and they're doing a lot of talking and not listening. That can definitely come up as well. Mercury in Aries loves to announce things. And so people can just be very boisterous, especially when you're trying to do eighth house things like work together. Because the eighth house is about intimacy. It doesn't always have to be about sexual intimacy. It can just be about like we're trusting each other to not just bulldoze each other kind of vibes, especially when Mercury is involved. And so it's more of a vulnerability thing when we're talking about an eclipse that's being essentially powered up by your eighth house. And so there can be some frustration when trying to express your emotions clearly to other people. And there can be a lot of misunderstandings in like networking circles or friendships and just partnerships in general. My advice would be, to have strategic think like to be very strategic with your words. Think before you speak. Mercury in Aries does not do well with thinking before they speak. They just kind of say whatever. I would know. I have Mercury in Aries natally. And I've had to learn to do that. But yeah, Mercury in Aries just kind of says whatever pops up in its mind. And so just thinking about what you want to say before you actually say it and being very considerate of how it might land. Um, is I think some solid advice for that full moon lunar eclipse that we just had. Um, if some sort of old opportunity or old project does come back, or old like relationship comes back up, whether it be business, friendship, romantic, whatever, um I think this is kind of like just my general retrograde advice is anytime the planet is retrograde, even if it is like, with a lunar eclipse, um, is eh, take a look to see what needs to be closed out. It doesn't mean that you have to take it back on. But obviously, if it's coming back up, there's something that is unfinished there, whether it be internally for you, because a lot of this is internal for you. So whether it be internal and just something you need to close out for you, or that you need to have a conversation with somebody to either give them closure and to finally just put the whole thing to bed, that is something that I would also say as well, is to not kind of like run past it and just be like, I'm not doing that. I mean, like that's an option, but I think that's a very Mercury and Aries thing to do, which is why I'm kind of warning against that, because Venus retrograde is there, and so it's very likely that it'll come back up if you don't deal with it now. Um, and so when then we'll have because I was like, why did I say that in particular? Oh, because we'll have Saturn um visiting those, like coming back over those degrees that Mercury and Venus are at um, in 2027. I want to say 2027, like mid 2027. I think that Saturn will go back over those those um, those degrees that they're at right now. Okay, let me look at the comments. Gotcha. Gotcha. I feel like that can be a big issue when we're talking about, like, because you have Mercury and Scorpio, and so it can come off like really intense, even if you don't mean it intense. Mercury and Scorpio isn't a mean placement as far as communication. It is intense though, and so it's very direct. And it can sometimes be a lot about what you don't say, even if you don't mean to be cryptic. A lot of people can like think that you mean something that you didn't even say. So sometimes it works against you in that way. um, um, Jacqueline, I got you. Um, and then, but yeah, sometimes it can just kind of show up that way. Um, yeah. So hold on a second. I'm reading your other message. Uh, got it. Ah, okay. Ah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. No, definitely. Um, I love that Robin's like, no, Alex, be mean. Oh my goodness. But yeah, so um let's see. So like some overall highs. I think you'll come out of all of those kind of lunar eclipse feels with like a renewed self-awareness and confidence. You can have, anytime we're dealing with eighth house, we do not get out of dealing with finances. And so I think it's a great opportunity to make improvements in budgeting and financial management. Um, and possibly because you rebudget something, because again, Mercury is conjunct that Venus retrograde in Aries. Um, if you do decide to rebudget and cut back on spending, and you're able to therefore pay certain credit cards off or pay off certain debts, then it might leave you with excess later, that you're able to invest in new endeavors. So it's a new opportunity with work, I guess. And I think that's like the backhanded like thing that comes with Venus in Aries, because Venus doesn't like being in Aries, period. It hates being in Aries. But Venus in Aries doesn't mean that it can't do good things. It just means that it takes a little bit more work for it to do good things. So Venus retrograde in Aries' gift is essentially, hey, I need to go back revisit my own self-esteem, revisit my own budgeting, and fix these things, and then just kind of strategize. And then later on, I'll reap the benefits of those things. So you'll probably be able to invest in something that you do care about, and have that new beginning later after you bring closure to a couple things. Um, where was I? Strengthening connections in social and professional networks can also be something that comes from that. I'm really just focusing on the Venus, on that Venus and Mercury conjunction, because it's such a big part of this eclipse. Um, just like in when we get to the solar eclipse in Aries, that solar eclipse in Aries is conjunct Mercury retrograde, or not Mercury retrograde, it's conjunct Mercury in Aries. No, no, is it? Hold on. Let me look, because I'm like, is it is it conjunct Mercury in Aries? Mm, yep, it's Mercury retrograde. I was like, I couldn't remember if it was direct or not. Let me see. Ooh, okay. Yes, definitely use it to pay off any debts that you need to. I think that would be a great thing to do right now, because it'll set you up for a good position in the future. Okay, so kind of getting back on track here. So yeah, then some um overall, I guess, like challenges and problem solving is letting go of outdated self perceptions. Anytime we're dealing with an eclipse, a lunar eclipse in particular, we're talking about the South Node. And the South Node is what we want less of, as well as what we're letting go of, what we no longer need. And so and the moon is habits. Other than our emotion, the moon stands for our habits. And so when we put that together, it can be like letting go of certain habits, or letting go of certain beliefs that are just kind of outdated, that we don't need anymore, that aren't useful, that aren't helpful. Um, and then dealing with potential conflicts in group settings, or like with friendships and partnerships and things like that. And as well as asserting yourself in communication. If you Because I know with Virgo risings, a lot of times they can have a hard time telling people no. Virgo and Libra risings, to be fair, both have that issue. I've noticed. um, but yeah, there can be this want to not say no to people. But I think with this eclipse, it's a really good opportunity to learn to say no to people, or at least to assert yourself. Um, uh, don't worry about if you're coming off mean or not. Like, I think as long as you are being strategic about your words, it's fine. Because there's always an opportunity, I think, because I think this eclipse will show you, especially that eclipse in Libra, not Libra, the full moon eclipse in Libra, that'll come after the solar eclipse. I think that will show you who's really there to support you and who isn't, because the people that are there to support you, they'll see your assertiveness for what it is and not take it personal. And they'll accept that. And so I wouldn't worry about coming off mean. Just make sure that you are being mindful of your words, but saying exactly what you mean in a very Aries, direct way. We're harnessing Mars energy, especially since you have that Mars in Cancer. I know you don't like to say no to people. That's also the thing that I like rag on. Like, that's my favorite placement to like rag on is that Mars and Cancer people, they hate telling people no, but they also hate telling people they're mad at them. And I don't think it's because they are like wusses or anything like that. I think it's more because Mars and Cancer has a great ability to hurt people, and they don't want to do that. They are much better at nurturing others. And so they want to nurture, but they do realize that they could really hurt some people's feelings, because they're very good observers, and they nurture so well that they know where people need to be nurtured, and therefore they know people's soft spots. And so, yeah, I would not worry about um, who thinks you're mean and who doesn't. Just, try and work on direct communication and being assertive. We have a couple comments. Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I love that. I think it's so funny. I've met a couple people with Mars and Cancer, and I'm like, whenever they are mad and I can tell, and I'm like, are you mad at me? They're like, no. And I was like, yes, you are. Yes, you are, you liar. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, I think that is about it. Um, yeah, I think that's about it for with just looking over the notes here and make sure I didn't miss anything. Um, if you need to seek out any sort of like mentorship or guidance, I don't know if you have like anybody that would take that role or anything like that, or just a friend, a supportive friend, that already kind of embodies that very direct kind of energy, like almost like a Queen of Swords kind of figure. Yeah, do that. Like learn with them or learn from them. I think that could also be something because again, we're getting into that eighth house energy where it's like shared resources. So it can very much be learning to kind of share personality traits almost. Um, but that is everything for the lunar eclipse. We're going to move on to the Aries eclipse for you, and then that'll be it for you, Alex. So let me just shift over to the Aries one. Yes, absolutely, Robin. Okay, let me just shift over to the um yeah, I just need to look really quick. This is the lunar eclipse. Where is the solar one? There it is. Okay, so okay, so let's go back to your chart here. Okay, so this solar eclipse in Aries is also in your eighth house. So we're seeing a lot of the same themes. Um, we have the ruler being Mars in Cancer. So a lot of the same themes are being reiterated. So I guess the lovely part of all of this is that if you don't get it in the first 6 months, the solar eclipse is giving you the opportunity to get it in the next 6 months. So you've got a whole year of practicing. So, but you can see a lot of big themes as far as like major transformations and shared resources, relationships with people, and just kind of a lot of psychological growth. If you find yourself like being a bit more reflective and a little like I guess reclusive, being a bit more private, that's normal. I think Aries is the self. The eighth house is where we kind of go to hide or not hide. I would say maybe that's a bad like verbiage, but like it's kind of where we like go to do our own thing, to just kind of like reflect. Think of the eighth house as almost like a coffin, kind of a coffin that you want to be in. It's or like a cocoon. I think that's like less like scary sounding. I don't know. But it's like that cocoon that we go in where we go to kind of morph into something new. And you can't do that if you're out, you know, doing all the things with all the people all the time. And so if you do take time to just kind of be by yourself, I wouldn't feel bad about it. So Mars is going to be the ruler of the eclipse in Cancer in your 11th house, and it suggests changes in long-term goals as well as alliances and who's supporting you. The eclipse is opposing your natal Jupiter in Libra in your second house, highlighting financial balance and values. So I told you we'd have themes that come back up. And that is going to definitely be one of them. As well as like that is also going to touch on like your beliefs surrounding relationships, as well as like values that your relationships hold. Like, do you and like whoever you're partnering with, whether it be romantic, friendship, or business, do you guys have the same values? Um, especially when it comes to like where you're making money, and like how those relationships make you feel about yourself in particular, because the second house is where like the second house is our stuff, where the eighth house is like other people's stuff. The second house is our stuff, and as well as like our values, our income, our self-esteem. And so when we're talking about Jupiter and Libra, it can be about like, how do my relationships make me view myself? And so again, we're seeing some of those themes talk about like the conflict between just kind of wanting to do your own thing versus relationships and how they affect you. Um, because I could very much see it as being like, well, this is how I see myself, but my partner or my friend sees me completely differently. So which one is it? Like it can be both. You can find something in the middle, but the question is, what does that mean for you? Um, and then let's see. Um, so we talked about financial balance and self-esteem. It's trine your sun in Sagittarius in the fourth, um, which does bring up some themes of like home or like the past or like family related stuff, or it can just be like like where do you go for privacy? Because the fourth house, like as far as timing in a chart, is going to be midnight. Where are we usually at midnight on a weekday? I know I definitely like for myself, definitely I'm at home asleep at midnight every night. But um usually most people are in the house around midnight, and so it's where we go to kind of be alone. It's behind closed doors. And so with that, it can bring up a lot of like domestic kind of themes. So I'm wondering if there is like possibly some sort of new change that's going on, like if you want to move, or if you're welcoming some sort of new um or if you're going to get some sort of like announcement about somebody in your family like welcoming a new baby, because Aries can be children, um as well, since it's the first sign, and so it's going to be like literally the first stage of life. And so sorry, I'm just reading the comments. These are, you guys are funny. um And then, so yeah, that could definitely be something that comes up. Some highs and opportunities I think you can look forward to are like a powerful opportunity to clear emotional and financial things out, as well as a chance to deepen intimate relationships as well as business relationships, as well as like, finding support in family life or, in your home life, finding more security in those places. It can even be about working from home. I could see that as well. Um, or working in a house, like, because you said that you were thinking about um, going back to working as a nanny. And that would definitely be something that I could see because you're working with children. Um, and so therefore the security is coming from a more nurturing fourth housey kind of like career space. And so it's not the typical career space is like what I'm trying to get at. Some challenges I could see are potential financial instability or a need to reassess monetary decisions, but we kind of already talked about that when we were talking about the lunar eclipse in Virgo. And so you'll have these kinds of energies going at the same time. And so, like we said, it's a great opportunity to reassess your budget, especially because that lunar eclipse in Virgo is hitting on your first house. And so it's going to change a lot of what's going to happen for you in the next year. Um, because all four of those houses, anytime you have any sort of major, like any eclipse, on in your first, fourth, 10th, or seventh house, it's a not no pressure, but it's a life-changing time. Because literally those four houses are kind of like the backbone of someone's chart. And so whenever an eclipse or something that like triggers those points, it literally starts like turning the wheel of the chart. And so a lot of things get active. Um, so yeah, we can also see like some emotional intensity and vulnerability in close relationships, and that doesn't have to be a challenge. I think, emotional vulnerability can be hard, sure. Um, but I think with the right people, like we were talking about, the people that really support you, it will be less of a challenge. But it's like it's a work in progress, I think, for all of us. Navigating power dynamics in group and social settings is also another one. So some things I advise are prioritizing emotional and financial security by setting firm boundaries for yourself as well as for other people. So if you don't have the money for certain things, it's okay to tell people, "Hey, I can't go out to party tonight." Mm, And mm, sorry, I just got a my microphone is being so weird right now. This Mercury retrograde. Can everybody still hear me? Because I just got a message on my screen saying that my microphone changed source. Uh, okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure. Um, Thank you. I was like, yeah, just want to make sure because I just got a message saying your microphone changed sources, and I was like, what? I have like three microphones set up right now because I'm wearing my headphones. But anyway, so yeah, and then leveraging kind of like your network for financial or career support. So what do I mean by that? I mean essentially just kind of like balancing it out. Like, so what we were talking about before. Um, the people that are going to be there to support you and the people that understand will make essentially they'll make space for you. So if they want to be there for you, if they want to include you, then those people are going to be supportive of what you're trying to do financially. That's what I'm trying to get at. And so those kinds of people will be like, "Hey, I understand that this is going on for you. Maybe we can make an event that's either like, let's say, like free, or like I don't know. I'm really bad at, I'm like blanking on examples right now. But do you get what I'm saying? Um, Hopefully so. And I keep getting this message about my microphone changing sources. Uh, um, yeah. Um, and also not even for financial support. I think also like because it's Cancer in your 11th house, it's more about emotional support. Yes, finances are like in there, but I think it's more about emotions and who's like emotionally supportive of you as well, and who's emotionally understanding and nurturing of you as well. And then just kind of like focusing on long-term planning is my last thing for you. So that is your reading for the two eclipses, Alex. Let me know if you have any questions. Um, yeah, other than that, we are going to go ahead to Melissa. Um, Let me pull her chart up.
Professor Micah, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Awesome. I noticed on Alex's chart that she has her South Node on her MC.
Hmm.
Does that did and this is just based on my little knowledge. The way I think or thought of South Node is that like can mean your past life
Hmm.
or stuff you've already sort of mastered. So does this mean that maybe like stuff that she's already sort of learned or maybe her habits or whatever because it's on her MC is like more visible to like the general population or people can see it.
Yeah. I think that it can definitely be like, the South Node being on someone's MC can be like, them kind of getting into areas that they're already very naturally good at. So in
Oh,
Alex's case, it can be like something in communication or just being very relational, something doing something that is very learning based. because Gemini is what you learn, and it's like collecting a lot of different information from different sources. Um, Gemini can also be two of something. So Mars will eventually go into Gemini, and I always like find this so funny is that whenever Mars goes into Gemini, you'll notice a lot of people start getting multiple jobs, depending on where it's landing in their chart. Because obviously Mars in Gemini isn't going to land in work houses for everybody, but you'll start noticing a lot of people getting side hustles during Mars and Mars and Gemini. We won't see Mars and Gemini again, I think, until at least like the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it can definitely be like with someone's South Node on their uh sorry, I'm gonna let you guys know. My heater is about to turn on. Um, I can turn it off if it gets too loud, but it does rattle. So if you hear something in the background, that's what that is. It's just obnoxious. Anyway, so the South Node also on the MC can be like a boss that might you might have like known in a past life. If you want to take it like the past life route, it can be like an authority figure that you've already kind of met in a past life, or somebody that feels very like that feels very familiar. And you kind of automatically can kind of feel into what those people are about. Um, because the moon is also intuitive as well. Let's see. I try. I try. um, Hold on one second. Because that's gonna bother me. I'm gonna turn off my heater really quick. I'll be right back. Okay. So my heater should be turning off in just a second here. It just takes some time. Did anybody else have any questions before we move on to Melissa? Thank you, Alex. All right. So you're very welcome. Okay. So this is Melissa's chart. I just want to double check that I have all the information correct. January 17th, 1979, in New London. I'm blanking out. CT is Connecticut. There we go. Do I have everything correct, Melissa?
Yep, you got it.
Okay. I was like, what is CT? I was like, it's not Colorado. There we go. She's an Aquarius rising, sun in Capricorn and moon in Virgo. So, this Virgo lunar eclipse is going to be in her eighth house. So we've got some similar things going on, almost to Alex. So those are that same kind of like eighth house kind of themes are going to come up as well. So when we look at a lunar eclipse in the eighth house, number one, Virgo is a mutable sign, and so it's already about change of some sort happening. And so Mercury is the ruler of this eclipse in particular. And so that is landing in Melissa's third house. So it can be like changing her mind about finances or reevaluating like a thought process surrounding shared resources. Um, she also has her moon as well as Saturn in the eighth house as well as her north node too. Um, so let's kind of get into that. Um, so we can definitely see, I think the biggest one is like some big shifts like surrounding financial um, situations, um, in particular, like regarding debt. And like I said, shared resources as well as like eighth house can be investments too. Um, I think sometimes I like focus on debts so much with the eighth house because it's like taxes are there too. The eighth house just does not sound like the like funnest house, but I mean, I do want to also stress that the eighth house is where investments come from that can make you money, as like a positive. So Mercury is the ruler of the eclipse, and that is going to be in her, and it links to her third house of transformation and communication, as well as just kind of like learning new subjects and thought processes. The third house is kind of like the junk drawer of the chart, if I'm being completely honest. Like everything, a little bit of everything dwells there. Like, um, but those are just kind of like a few of the things that you can find being linked to the third house. Um, so Mercury is actually going to be the ruler of both her eighth and fifth house, which does suggest like some sort of like um mm, uh, I guess the best word that I can come up with at this moment is like almost like reliance on creative skills, especially if it does have to do with like communication. Um, or like making money off of like creative skills. Or it could be side hustles too, because the fifth house is like side hustles that like are essentially like hobbies that you turn into money. And that's because we're talking about the eighth house and the fifth house, which when you put those two together, you do get like essentially creativity. And so that's why I'm linking those two in that way, is like possibly like finding ways to make money by some sort of like creative side hustle, or because we're talking about the third house, it can be talking about like taking on another job that maybe has to do with like working with your hands, like creating jewelry or creating like why do I think of glass blowing? Because glass blowing is like something that you use fire with, and Aries is like the ruler, and so I'm thinking like glass blowing, but it's not. It doesn't have to be that in particular, but that's an example. um, but we can also see kind of like the that kind of being a theme is making money in some sort of creative way. Um, Possibly to pay off certain things so that you're able to do fifth house things later. The fifth house also has to do with children. So I don't know if you have children, Melissa, but that could also be something that factors in, is maybe instead of it being all financial, I actually no, I think it would still be financial because it could be about like, certain things just kind of changing in children's lives as well. Maybe needing to take on new expenses to invest in like in a child's like creative pursuits. That could be a way that I could see the eighth house and fifth house kind of working together and kind of needing to rebudget, so that everything kind of gets done financially. Because Virgo is still going to be about like your everyday schedule, the everyday mundane kind of things that need to get done around the house, or just kind of like errands that need to be run. But Virgo is also just very creative. It's attention to detail. Um, I don't know why I think of ballet. Maybe it's because of like the pointed toes. It seems like very like Mercury like to me. um, but we can see that the natal Saturn and Moon, as well as her vertex in Virgo, can indicate some sort of like karmic or fated like action or situation that happens related to financial responsibilities. And it could even be like what I was saying with Alex. The eighth house is a lot of the times emotional. So even if it isn't financial, which a lot of times finances and emotions are tied together, if I'm being completely honest, like especially right now. um, but yeah, there can be like some sort of shift that happens when it comes to finances or emotional security. Um, we're in a Venus retrograde right now, so I'm not surprised. Um, it's just kind of something that happens. So I think a lot of this with Venus being conjunct the ruler of this lunar eclipse, it can be some sort of reevaluation of finances. And that almost like causing some sort of reevaluation of how you feel emotionally, like within yourself. Like, because a lot of the times, if we're not feeling very secure financially, then sometimes for some people, that can shake us, like self, like self-esteem wise, because we feel like we're not able to do as much as like that we want to do. Um, Kind of moving on from that, the North Node, we'll come back to it, but I do want to make sure I cover everything here. The North Node conjuncts the eclipse. Um, it kind of like suggests some sort of like self sufficiency as far as finances. So it could be, I'm not saying that like if you're getting help right now from somebody financially, I'm not saying that they're just going to like duck out on you, but it very might well be a situation because the North Node is like what is like the North Node is increase. And so when we look at a sign like Virgo being in a lunar eclipse, it's essentially saying like it's like the same vibe as like the Nine of Pentacles, which is all about self-sufficiency. So it's like you're doing a lot of stuff yourself. So if you are in a situation where you are sharing expenses with somebody, you might find that that person is like, I can no longer cover this. I need help on covering this. And you're having to take on more of the responsibility for certain finances, or you're having to really be the shoulder for somebody to cry on more often than you usually would be. Um, but I think this can also be something that's really empowering, even if it is hard. I mean, we're already dealing with hard energy because the eighth house and the fifth house square each other. It's literally the least funnest house, which is the eighth house, which stands for all the things that are not fun against the fifth house, which is everything that is fun. The fifth house is our self expression, it is our hobbies, it's the things that we do for fun, it's romance that is just kind of casual and can get intense, it is art, it's drama, it's all the sparkly things. And it's coming up against the eighth house that wants to suck the life out of it. Like, and so when we are looking at those two together, um, it's not saying that you can't express yourself. It's just saying you have to transform how you express yourself, express finding new ways to express yourself. And I think that in itself can become very empowering because you're finding new ways to express yourself. So basically, it's like I can express myself in any situation, whether it be hardship, whether it be abundance. I am still going to find essentially like the silver lining in a situation. Um, and it doesn't matter. I'm still going to get it done. And that could be because you really dive into your marketplace because the fifth house can be our marketplace as well. Like where we sell things. And that's why I brought up like the side hustle thing. So if you do have like something that you like some sort of like creative business. And creative can mean a lot of things. It doesn't have to mean like painting or like arts or something like that. Because the way that I think about creative is like are you just like very resourceful? Are you resourceful? Like, is essentially when I think about creativity, I think about resourcefulness because that's all that art is, I guess, essentially. Um, but hold on, I think we had a comment really quick. Um, I mean, the Nine of Tentacles. I want to say that I've actually seen a Tentacles tarot deck. And I wonder if the pentacles are renamed tentacles. I've seen like some sort of like monster like tarot deck, and I wonder if they like rename that. It wouldn't surprise me. Anyway, getting back to topic. Oh, we're coming back around to that Venus retrograde conjunct Mercury and Aries during the lunar eclipse. It's mostly going to affect your third house, which is about like movement and communication, as well as like siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, like the family members that like you are related to, but you're not like essentially like a lot of the times living with. It can be friends as well. It can be your car, or just kind of like transportation, what you're learning as well. So you can be like kind of revisiting um, some sort of past situation, or past issue with a sibling, friend. Neighbors can also be in the third house, can be found in the third house as well. And it can be a really great time to clear the air with that eighth house energy, because the eighth house likes to purge things that are not necessary or that are kind of making us sick. It's like the ultimate detox house. Um, and we could also like revisit learning a skill or building certain opportunities, that maybe that we drop the ball on and we want to pick back up, on an old hobby, especially if it has to do with any sort of like writing third house thing. Or I could even see like with movement, the third house is slightly related to Gemini. And so it can be about walking. So if you are finding yourself, because Virgo energy can sometimes be very anxious. And so if you are finding yourself kind of getting overwhelmed, I think walking, like just out in nature, grounding yourself that way could be really beneficial. Um, yeah, because the third house is literally like walking. Um, what did I want to say next? Hold on, let me look at the notes here. Mm, okay. Rethinking personal branding and how you kind of show up, as well as self-expression. Um, so like on social media, I think is like one of the biggest examples that I can use. Or just like communicating with people. Virgo, yes, is Virgo, but what's on the other side of Virgo? Pisces. Pisces is screens. Excuse me. Um, and so it can be like what's happening like on cell phones and things like that. So again, social media. So if you're like wanting to, I don't know if you would be interested in being a social, like a social media influencer or something like that, or like selling something online. I think that could be something else that could, possibly, provide some relief, if things are starting to feel a bit stressful financially. Um, uh, yeah, I think that's like something that I think that could be helpful. Um, I'm going to also say the same thing that I said with Alex. When communicating with people, whether it be online or not, make sure that you're just being very aware of your words. Um, because of that Venus retrograde, Mercury conjunction, that's happening in the eighth house. Anytime the eighth house is involved, we're having to transform something. So it's literally having to like tweak your words, when it's coming to like relating to other people, especially if we're talking about money being involved. So just being very careful with your words. We have a comment. Hold on. Mm. Ah, okay. Yeah. No, so you might be finding that you are getting into that a little bit more. Um or having to, yeah, lean into that a little bit more than you have been. Definitely let me know how that goes. If you don't mind me asking, what do you sell? Let me know. So some challenges, you may feel like you're not able to get your point across to a lot of people. And if that's that Venus retrograde Mercury stuff, um, you can second guess a lot of your decisions. And I think you'll feel that the most when we start to see Mercury conjunct Neptune going into April. So next week, because Mercury will come into Aries again, because right now it's like about to jump into Pisces. Um, but when it goes direct, it'll jump back into Aries, but by that time, Neptune will already be in Aries. So Mercury, the planet of communication, will have to cross Neptune. And so it can be a lot of like your messages not going through. So there can be some miscommunication or literally like lost correspondences with people, whether it be like you lost documents or like you were just misunderstood. Be very careful about dropping your phone in water, and like water and gadgets also like being a thing, because I could see like with the third house and the eighth house being involved with that eclipse, it could be like having to buy a new phone, and therefore your marketplace is kind of put on hold, and that causing some stress because your phone got destroyed by water. Because the third house can also be um, what's in our hands as well as gadgets. Hold on. Oh, you make soaps and oils. Ooh, lovely. Okay. No, sorry. I'm like thinking, yes, I don't think you're fated for the employment thing as well. If I'm being completely honest with you, you're an Aquarius rising. So you're not going to like doing like the typical like work thing. I say this as somebody that has Aquarius in her second house. Um, I don't do the 9 to 5 very well. I have tried so hard to do the 9 to 5 thing. And I will tell you that I can count on one hand how many times I have left a job and I'm on good terms with my boss, with my past boss. That is, I'm just not good at the 9 to 5 thing. And I think a lot of people with Aquarius energy as well as Aries energy, um, tend to do better as entrepreneurs. And this could be an opportunity where you're finding a great opportunity to lean into that more. I'm not trying to, I mean, like, I guess, like, knock on wood. A lot of people are losing their jobs right now because Venus is retrograde, and this country is doing interesting things. And so, yeah, it could be a time where you're having to lean into your creative money making ability a bit more. Um, okay, where were we? Um, mm, 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 mm. Okay, so be patient with any frustration in conversations. Take time to listen as much as you speak, and revisit old projects or ideas. Sometimes when we try something the first time, the timing just isn't right. And so don't be afraid to go back to those things, especially again if they're creative. It can be like I could especially see like because I am learning with a lot of like cosmetic things. There's a lot of paperwork involved, which I imagine is the case. So, like, I'm just using an example here. So, say that you wanted to start making like perfumes or something like that. Like, I know you make oils, but in perfumes can be in oil form. But, like, let's say that you wanted to like start making like the fancy perfumes like that, like, are in the spray bottles. So, like, it could be like getting back into that and learning like and learning kind of like the more like technical back end that comes with all of that, and signing off on paperwork, and having to invest in certain licenses. That is very Mercury Venus stuff going on, that I could see as well. So yeah, be patient, and just kind of just realize that sometimes the timing isn't right. It doesn't mean that it's never going to happen, but just sometimes things take time. But it's a great financial restart. Um, and like Alex, debt resolution, I think, is a really big one. It can help you feel much more empowered when it comes to investments, later on down the line, as long as you are doing your due diligence with budgeting. Um, and side hustles, I think, are going to be your best friend. Kind of moving into the next 6 months, especially if they are creative, like that you're already doing. Um, and it's all pushing you towards that very Aquarian independence because Aries is also like independent as well. And so definitely, I think like Virgo, the lunar eclipse in Virgo is kind of priming you for what the Aries eclipse is already going to like kind of push forward. Some overall challenges can be, like I said, managing debt, navigating emotional stress, as well as adapting to unexpected financial or career shifts. Um, that's a big one. So just keep that in mind. Um, yeah, I don't want you to stress at all because I think sometimes when we're talking about finances, we can get a bit stressed. Um, but I do wonder since Gemini is involved, or like Mercury energy is involved, I do wonder if you have to pick up multiple like side hustles um to kind of make ends meet, or if you're just doing a lot of multitasking. That could be something else. And maybe it's not that you do a another side hustle, but it's just like a lot. You just have a lot going on and you're having trouble managing your schedule from day to day. Ah, Uber Eats. Yes. Okay. Yes. That's very third house because you're literally like in the car. Very third house. Um uh and then yeah, just setting clear financial boundaries for yourself and other people. And then expressing adaptability and learning new skills to enhance financial security. So if you think that something will help you out in the long run, assess if it's worth investing in. Um, Again, especially if it's creative. But I wouldn't just be impulsive like Aries has a tendency to do. I would think it through and take time to really research it because that's what Virgo is best at. It likes to fact check, it likes to research. And so really lean into that. Um, yeah, no, I've heard that Uber Eats is hard. I have also heard, I don't know if it was Uber Eats or DoorDash, but I heard they don't pay you guys anything. Um, if just kind of like as a side note here, because I am like the queen of side hustles. I don't know if you've ever tried Amazon Flex. Um, Amazon itself sucks. I am currently in arbitration with Amazon right now, fighting with them. So not the most ringing endorsement, but they do pay you very well. So just to let you know, they do pay you, I think, a bit more. Then they do pay you a lot more than uh, Uber Eats or like DoorDash. So just a thing to note. Amazon Flex. So it's a essentially is you're taking your own car and you're delivering packages for Amazon. And so it's called the Amazon Flex program. I'll type it in the chat. Because I think at some point we're all gonna need a side hustle. uh, Sometimes it does take time to get into that program, um, but it is especially if you grab shifts like within the hour that they start, you can make easily like I was making $170 in under 5 hours. So um yeah, that's my if you ever need something like that, that is one of my recommendations. Just remember that Amazon does suck and that they're a big corporation just like Walmart. So I wouldn't expect anything as far as like loyalty from them. Okay. Anyway, moving on. So I think that was all I had for the lunar eclipse. Um That's so funny. Okay, let's talk about the solar eclipse. Staying on track here. So we're gonna move on. So some major changes with the solar eclipse and Aries are going to be communication, learning, and personal kind of mindset. So Mars is the ruler of the eclipse. It's in your sixth house in Cancer, and it opposes your natal sun. Mars, as well as, hold on, no, am I looking at the wrong chart here? Hold on, hold on. No, okay, never mind. Jesus Christ. Uh, so okay, so we have the solar eclipse in Aries that is going to oppose your natal Pluto in the ninth. So when we look at that itself, but also when we look at the, and this is what I was trying to say. So the actual eclipse in Aries is going to oppose your natal Pluto, but Mars in Cancer is going to be the ruler of the solar eclipse, and that is going to oppose your natal Mercury, Sun, and Mars. So let's break that down. Anytime we have an eclipse opposing Pluto, we're already looking at some big changes, especially when we're talking about ninth house stuff, which is like legal like issues or disputes or court dates and things like that. But it also can be like school, like higher education. It can be learning a new language. It could be learning a new or like taking college classes or like the ninth house can even sometimes be getting married, like or like I don't know if that is if you are married or if that's something that you would want. But I do think that hold on, let me see the answer to your question. No. Okay. Well, I'm like, just so you know, if anybody ever asks you what are some of the fun things that the ninth house like talks about, marriage is one of them. I mean, I guess marriage may not be fun to everybody. So I take that back. So, but anyway, so we have Pluto there. And so it's changing how you relate to certain beliefs because the ninth house is where our beliefs are at. Pluto is already there. And so it's always talking about like how do our relationships affect our beliefs. Um, we can also look at this from the opposition that's happening with Mars in the sixth that's opposing natal sun, Mars, and Mercury. Um, that's going to be one of the biggest changes, I think, to mentality that we can point out right there, because the sun is like ourselves and our vitality. What do we want to learn? In a lot of ways, it is our mind, because it's like where we light up, it's where we illuminate. It's the things that we want to, expand on as well. Mercury is obviously our thought process, like I guess in a more direct way, and Mars is where we're putting our energy. And so when Mars itself, as the ruler of this eclipse, is opposing all of those things, I would say be very careful about how fast you're moving. Um, to not get into accidents or to be very careful about like how fast you're moving specifically like at work, like because Mars can sometimes be a lot of like burning yourself or like dealing with sharp things. Um, like so you could like slice your finger like because you're just not paying attention and you're moving too quickly and you're trying to get things done. And that could be caused by a lot of stress. While Mars in the sixth house, yeah, in the sixth house does do very well at getting things done. I think that's a positive thing that you can look forward to I think the other thing is that it's Mars. It's a malefic for a reason. While it can do good things in the sixth house, it's a taskmaster in the sixth house. Um, it's also opposing your own natal Mars. So being a bit more accident prone because of fast movement can definitely be something that you want to watch out for. On the other end, it can just be extremely motivating, but it can feel like you're taking on the world because you're just taking on a lot. And you feel like you have a lot more responsibility to yourself and other people. Um, And can that be empowering? Yes. I think because of the opposition, it might not feel that way. I think once the opposition lightens up, it might feel a lot better. You'll feel the relief, but you'll also feel like, very much airy, like a bit more confident, because you're like, look at what I was able to handle in the midst of all of that. Um, the eclipse is also trying your natal Uranus in Scorpio in your 10th house. Um, and that can be like a shakeup in career, as well as like public reputation and like public image. And so it can be like new ways of um, like showing up to people or getting your name out there. If we're talking about business or like work, it can be like finding a bigger audience because yes, the yes, Uranus is going to be like friends, but it can also be like who is watching you too. Um, Especially in the 10th house, or it can be just finding new ways to market yourself, um, or new ways to kind of like break up stagnancy in your work life. Since the sixth house is already kind of involved there. Um, Hold on one second. I My headphones are about to die. Give me one second because I want to make sure that I can hear everybody. Or actually, if my headphones die, I will let you know. Actually, I'm just going to turn them off and just chat me in the. I'll just make sure I'm watching the chat because my headphones are about to die, so I won't be able to hear anybody. But I will look at the chat and hopefully that'll work. If we run into an issue, then I'll just get on with my phone and I'll be able to hear people. Um, but so now that I turned those off, can everybody still hear me? Give me a thumbs up. No. Okay, cool, cool, cool. All right. Okay. So, um, yeah, so we are looking at sparking some sort of like new innovation in career and public life. So, shaking things up, essentially getting out of your comfort zone when it comes to career. You want new things, you're going to have to do a little bit something different. Um, you have a square to your natal Pluto in Libra in the ninth, indicating like some sort of potential tension regarding higher learning, as well as travel or beliefs, because all of those are ninth house things. Um, so some opportunities I think that you can look forward to with with the solar return, or not solar return, solar eclipse in Aries. Our new beginnings in communication, learning, and networking, career innovation and breakthroughs, especially if you embrace unconventional approaches to those things. Like I said, you want something new, you got to do something new. So breaking out of your comfort zone, big risk, big reward. Like I will say, though, you still have that lunar eclipse in Virgo energy lingering. So while I do think, yes, you should take certain risks, I think you should research those risks before you take them to just make sure you're not throwing money away, or not throwing time away. I think that's the more important one, especially since you have Mars oppositions going on. Sometimes we can waste energy. Um, and especially when the 12th and the 6th house involved, because the 12th house can be our mental health, where our 6th house can be like our physical health. And so sometimes we can just feel so stressed out, and time and money being wasted is only going to add to that. And so just making sure that you research those risks, I think, will be key. um like any kind of like shaking up or like making shifts in work routines um can bring kind of like, or changing up like your work routine, or like how many hours a day you work, or how much time you're taking to yourself, and or maybe like taking some time out to um, to do self care, I think can help a lot actually with efficiency when it comes to work, as well as just kind of feeling a bit more satisfied and less burnt out. Because anytime the sixth house is involved, we can sometimes feel really burnt out and just like we're getting everything done. But we're just not doing well as far as like being able to go for the long haul. Um, uh, yeah, other than that, just be flexible. Um, organize as best as possible. And I think we were talking about earlier just being very careful with your words when communicating with other people so that you don't have a lot of misunderstandings and power struggles because you'll see more of that, a lot of that going into April and May. And that's just everybody because we'll have a Mars Pluto opposition that's coming up when Mars enters back into Leo. And so, and that'll be in April, but we'll feel that quite a few times throughout this year. That same point will be triggered over and over. Kind of think to what was happening at the beginning of January as far as like Mars things and conflict and work. That is the same kind of vibe that you're gonna get as far as April. Um, so yeah, think about like the beginning of January, Mars conflict, aggression, what was happening around that time. Because that was the last time that Mars was in Leo. So yeah. Okay. Any questions, Melissa? Because that is your reading. So I just want to know if you have any questions before we move on to Robin.
I honestly just want to know when my finance,
Oh,
like,
Melissa, I
oh, you
can't
can't
hear
hear me.
you. So if you could type it into the chat, that's okay. I'm like, I knew I should have like, I feel like this is such a like a Mercury retrograde thing for me to not charge my headphones before I got on. Oh my goodness. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions. And let's see. Finances be on track. Um, see. I think a good time. So Venus will actually come back into Pisces. Will it conjunct your South Node? Because that could bring some sort of resource back to you. Well, let's think like a more secure placement, which would be honestly, if I'm being completely honest, it would be the summer because that's when Saturn leaves your second house. So as long as you're doing all your Saturn work and doing the budgeting and cutting out all the unnecessary stuff, paying off debts, not using credit cards, all those second house things. When Saturn leaves out of your second house, I think you'll be able to breathe a lot better. And Saturn will leave Pisces briefly for in not in April, in May. It'll go into Aries and you'll get a a few months of reprieve before it goes back into Pisces. But then in March of 2026, Saturn will go back into Aries like permanently and it will not revisit Pisces again. And that will be leaving your second house. So once Saturn leaves your second house, honestly, I think you'll be in a better spot. You'll be in a lot more of a secure spot. Just make sure that you're doing all that Saturn work now, so that you're not left with a mess later. As somebody that has had Saturn in her second, I have Saturn natally, and so when I had my Saturn return, like I was not financially stable, but it was a lot of paying off debts and doing a lot of budgeting, cutting out expenses that weren't necessary. But I was in a much better space, like financially, um, once that someone Saturn left my second house, a much better space. Like, and so yeah, I would still say summer because May is like going into Gemini season. So yeah, summer. I count Gemini even though Gemini is spring. I count it as it's basically summer. But was that your only question? let me know if you have another one. And I'll keep an eye on the chat box so that I am going to go ahead and start on Robin. Uh, um, so Saturn retrograde, I'm going to summarize it really quick. Saturn retrograde is essentially a time where Saturn, it's kind of like, think of it as like when Saturn goes retrograde, it's kind of like when that hard ass boss like goes on vacation and all of a sudden you can breathe in the office. But the question is, are you going to continue to still work at the same capacity? Because when the boss does come back, they're going to ask you, what did you do? And if you didn't, then you get fired. But if you did, you could possibly get a promotion. That is essentially that's the best way that I can describe Saturn retrograde and how it affects people in general. So you find when Saturn goes retrograde that you're able to breathe a little bit better financially, or wherever it is in your chart, you're able to breathe a little bit better in that area of life. But once it goes direct, it still expects you to have done the same amount of work, like, or else you'll feel it when it does go direct. And so I hope that answers your question. Okay, we're gonna move on to Robin, and then I'll come back around to questions that might be had. No problem. That might be had. Like if anybody has any extra questions, I'll come back around to them after we're done with everybody's chart. Okay, so let's move on to Robin. This is Alex's chart, Melissa. Robin. Okay. So Robin, uh not uh-oh. Oh, wrong Vancouver. My bad. I thought it was Canada. My bad. Okay, let's edit this. Do I have everything else correct though? Vancouver, Washington. Gotcha. Okay. I will change that. Thank you for letting me know. Vancouver, not British Columbia. Um, Washington. Okay. So let me just double check that. All right. Yep, we are in Washington. All right. So we have you as a Pisces rising. Um, sun in, I was like, I almost lost track of your sun there for a second. Sun in Aries, moon in Aquarius. So that would put the lunar eclipse in Virgo in your seventh house. So we're talking about relationships, and boundaries in particular with relationships, since we're talking about Aries energy being involved. Um, the ruler of this eclipse is going to be in your second house, which is like, where is all of your stuff? Like your energy, your time, your income, your values, self-esteem. So a lot of this has to do with, do the people that you're partnering with, whether it be romantic or not, especially like even if it's like business, do you guys hold the same things sacred? Like, do you guys have the same value system? Do you mesh in that way? Do you feel supported by your relationships? Ah, gotcha. Gotcha. Um, yeah, so it can be a lot about, the eclipse can be like, do I feel supported by the relationships that I'm in? Um, oh, we can adjust the time now because I got 6 o'clock for you. 4 a.m. Okay, hold on. Let's edit it. Okay. So, all right, so this changes some things. So then that would put the eclipse in your eighth house. Everybody's got eighth house stuff going on. Wow. We've got such an intense group today. So you already know the spiel. So we're talking about intimacy. We're talking about taxes. We're talking about debts, shared resources, other people's money. We're talking about transformation, some sort of change that's happening. When it comes to Mercury in Aries would now be shifted to your third house. And so it can be a change of mentality. It can be like a lot like what else was a Aquarius rising? Hold on. A lot like Melissa. Um, the yeah, a lot like Melissa. Let me get back to your chart. Um, yeah, it would be a change of mentality or some sort of changes surrounding what you're learning, as well. Um, Mercury being so close to your sun, it's not an exact conjunction, but Mercury in Aries being the ruler, being like 8 degrees away from your sun, is going to affect partnerships as well because the sun rules partnerships for you. Um, and so it can be about like changing social networks, whether it be like online or just kind of meeting new people. But I think I also stand on what I was saying before as well is how supported do we feel by the people around us? Or like how connected do we feel to like our neighborhood or our actual neighbors, siblings, friends, um, like aunts, uncles, cousins, those people. There can be the eighth house can be a bit uncomfortable, especially when we're talking about conversation. So there can be a need to really speak up for yourself and be very careful about how you're expressing those. I'm like, I guess like what we've been saying before. I hate to sound like a broken record, but um is essentially, yeah, doing those same things, being very careful with our words when you're talking about like certain subjects with those people, to kind of avoid conflicts getting out of hand. I'm not saying to not speak your mind. I think in fact you should, but remember the eighth house is going to be some sort of transformation, and then the third house is automatically becoming involved, um, because the third house is our communication. Um, Mercury is going to be connected to not only your eighth house, but it's also connected to your fifth house. And so this can have to do with also like like self-expression in general. But if you um, work with children, if you have children, it can be about communication with children as well. Um, mm, let's see. Sorry, I got a call from my mom and it just threw me off. I was in the zone for a second. Um, Mercury is going to be the ruler of your eighth and fifth. And so I think, like a lot, like I was saying with Melissa, um, there can be some financial, may I know what house is it? Oh, I use whole sign. So I use whole sign as a, I'll say as a default. Um, just because I find that it works a little bit neater. Um, Placidus, I think, is a little bit more messy. Are you if you don't mind me asking, are you a Placidus person or are you like a whole sign person? Let me know in the comments. um, but yeah, so uh sorry. My mom texted me. I'm like, usually she does not text me after she calls me. So I just wanted to make sure that was not some sort of emergency. Um, Gotcha. Yeah, no, I definitely say Um, you know what, Alex, um, Melissa would like to know if, because Melissa, I'm just asking Alex this because I'm not able to do that. I don't control the YouTube. Melissa, because and I wouldn't even know how to do that on YouTube, but I think it is possible. Alex, Melissa wants to know if when, okay, gotcha. All right. I didn't know if you could see it. Gotcha. Thank you. Um, okay, so for back to Robin. Let me get back there. Hold on. Oh my goodness. Okay. Robin. There we go. Um, a lot of this is going to be about re-budgeting as well. Some sort of change around how much we're spending, especially if it is on artistic or more like hobby pursuits. Aries is impulsive. Um, And so when we're talking about third house, fifth house things, a lot of times it can be like, oh, I want to sample something new. And all of a sudden I've spent all this money on things. When I should be looking at things from a bit more of a long term kind of perspective. Virgo is an earth sign, so it's a bit more conservative with its resources. And it likes to plan ahead. And so just kind of looking at more long term goals as far as finances, I think can be really helpful. Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I don't know if you also have like any sort of creative side hustle that you would want to get into. Anytime I look at eighth house, fifth house, it just screams creative. Or doing something or selling something that is more of like a passion project. Um, let's see, what else? Uh, what have I not covered? Venus is going to be the ruler of your ninth, but it's also going to be the ruler of your fourth. So this could be like working from a distance or like working independently. Um, ah, oh, I love that. Do that. Do more of that. Yes, I love it. Yes, I think that could be very helpful. Like investing more time into that. Like obviously, everything needs a balance, but investing more time into the things that you love. Because as long as like I think like what is that saying? Like as long as you're doing what you love, the money will show up. And I think sometimes it's a lot easier said than believed, but literally Venus retrograde is talking about your beliefs. Like it says, okay, if you want to get out of something a bit more like 9 to 5, do you believe that you can do that? Virgo, unfortunately, is going to ask you, do you have a plan for that? Or are you just kind of like just flying by the seat of your pants? But um or it can be like, having a partner help you out with those kinds of things. It is going to have you really like, because Aries is kind of like the ruling energy here with the Virgo eclipse. It's going to be like, okay, I'm doing this on my own, but I kind of have somebody that's asking or like checking up on me to say, hey, like, yes, I will help you do this, but I need this from you as well. So it's kind of like an even exchange kind of thing. Um, let's see what's other. Okay, yes. I think that's also a very Libra thing too. Like just if you don't have like another person involved to like just balance it until you can gradually like move into something that you love a bit more. Um so okay. So then um yeah, because the fourth house is going to be like comfort within our home. Venus is our finances already. It is what do we value. It can also be like the past as well. And so it can, and I think a lot of times we don't talk about this part of the fourth house, but the fourth house can also be where things go to die. So a lot like I was talking about for Alex, I'm like, it can be about like letting go of certain beliefs that just do not like serve you anymore, that just are outdated. And you just kind of hold on to just because you've always thought those things. It can be a great lunar eclipse for questioning and challenging certain beliefs, and therefore having a whole like mentality shift. And you're able to achieve a lot more because you challenge those beliefs that just don't make sense for you in the situation that you're in anymore. Um, and you're kind of able to see how far you've come. Uh, yes, I don't know if you have like a where is series? I'm assuming you're getting series being in your fourth house because I don't see series here, but I'm gonna assume it's just from your app. But if you also have series in the fourth, let me know if you have a green thumb or not. Because series in the fourth can also be somebody that is really good at like nurturing things. And with series essentially being Demeter, it can be like somebody that's very good at growing plants in the house, like house plants. So if that's not something that you already do, maybe it could be a side hustle. Oh, okay. So, let's continue on. Some advice that I have is essentially like we are saying, budgeting, um, thinking like more so for the later rather than the now. Um, Saturn is in your second as well. And you have Saturn natally. You're in your Saturn return right now. It's currently on your Mars. Mars is, since we're going to be talking about the Aries solar eclipse, I'm just going to bring up Mars for a second. Um, Mars is going to be the ruler of your third, but it's also the ruler of your 10th. So a lot of that is about what you're like changing what you do for work or changing your mind about what you do for work. It can be like how you're moving at work, if you're doing some sort of driving for work, if you're like how you're communicating and expressing yourself at work. That can also be something that comes up as well. Do you value what you're doing for work, whether it be a side hustle or not? You know, do you still see value in those things? Because in your 10th house, you have Jupiter and Pluto. And so Saturn is working on all of those things. It's working on expanding your, um, let's see, Jupiter would be, it's working on one, expanding on your earning potential, but also because it would be attached to your second house, because it's the traditional ruler of Pisces, but also it would be the ruler of where is Sagittarius, your 11th, which is the money that you get from work. And so, so it's expanding on the people that are around you as well. So I wouldn't be afraid of asking for help when it comes to, or like being a bit more vulnerable and asking for help. And I think that will come a lot with, um, more so with the lunar eclipse in Virgo than it will with the solar eclipse in Aries, because Virgo, like I said, I think has not only has an issue with, sometimes telling people no, but also asking for help, especially being an Aquarius rising. I think a lot of times Aquarius risings want to do everything on their own. And it can sometimes it can be that independence, but I think the perfect balance with Aquarius rising is knowing when to ask, for their community to help them. Um, Pluto is in your 10th house. And so it's like that vulnerability sometimes has to be there. And that can sometimes be your greatest strength is being vulnerable with other people publicly. Um, and that can be something that really triggers a bigger earning potential. I'm not saying that you have to cry on the internet, but just building a loyal fan base from, being a bit more vulnerable with the people that are watching you, or building strong like relationships with the people that you interact with, um, at work as well. Uh, Gotcha. We actually have one more chart. We have Katie. I don't think Katie was able to make it today. I think she told me that. But we have one more person, and then we're gonna wrap up with Katie after. But we're on Robin right now. Um, ah, Hi Katie. Well, we have your chart coming up next, so stay tuned. So yeah, so the uh sorry. I keep like I'm going to blame Mercury retrograde. I keep getting off track. um so yeah, that is my advice for the Virgo lunar eclipse. As for the solar eclipse in Aries, we are looking at um something new kind of springing up when we're talking about new inspiration, new ideas, some sort of movement definitely happening with when it does come to your job, whether that be a boss transitions out, because I could see that happening with Pluto being there. Some sort of death of not death, maybe that's a bad word, because we don't want anybody to die, but I'm like maybe like some sort of like proverbial death of an authority figure, like they go to a new job or something like that. See, that's that whole like not watching my own words. Like um yeah, maybe like a boss transitions to a new department or like leaves, a company or something like that. I could see that happening, some sort of change happening in the workspace. If it's not you directly saying, hey, I'm getting out of here, I quit, or like just striking out on your own. Because I also could see that it's solar eclipse in Aries in your third house, and it's automatically connected to your house of reputation, career. And so if it's not about you changing careers, it could be very much about some sort of change happening as far as like your physical appearance as well, because the 10th house is going to square the first house. And so it's like, how do I think of myself? How do I kind of rectify that with this new mentality that I've taken on, and the new, like, how am I speaking about myself, and all of those things kind of coming back into balance with how you actually physically look. Those kinds of transformations are the ones that are going to start taking place, especially with that Virgo eclipse. Because the Virgo eclipse is also, we can't forget about actual Virgo things, which are going to be health, um, routines, as well as like day to day errands and stuff like that. Um, Virgo can also be healing as well, which is very much like an eighth house thing, because eighth house is trauma. Virgo can be like healing trauma as well as being like introspective. But for that solar eclipse in Aries, I think it's like that beautiful, like new burst of like confidence when it comes to feeling a bit more confident, because we have started to look at ourselves a bit differently, and we started morphing almost into, not, we won't say like a new person, but definitely somebody that is finding their footing into their own kind of authenticity, because you do have your moon in your first house. And so I imagine that sometimes there's definitely some changes to the physical appearance, because wherever the moon is where we're experiencing changes. It could also be about like, you're learning something new, or like you're learning how to change something about your identity. But mostly it's like some sort of mental change. Um, yeah. Uh, Anytime the third house is involved, I say embrace flexibility. The third house is a house that loves to change things up anytime it's involved. And because um the solar eclipse is there, it's bringing up something new anyway. The ruler of the solar eclipse is going to be in your sixth, so that's why I also say that it has so much to do with your work life. The sixth house is also health related. um Solar eclipses are usually a lot more positive than lunar eclipses. So if you are having any sort of like health issues or something like that, I could see that you either get some sort of plan together and it helps improve some sort of health issue that you might be having, if you have any at all. Not knock on wood, but if that's something that you've been looking into, then I could see it improving because you now have gotten a plan together. Because Mars is in the sixth when it's ruling over the solar eclipse in Aries. Let me look at the comments really quick. Yes, you're getting a big remodel and the new DM positions are opening up. Yep. I wonder, are you always get sick in April? Oh no. Well, yeah. Yeah. This could be about healing. Anytime Mars is in your sixth, while it does get a lot done, Mars is where things get hot. So that makes sense. And your sixth house is like health. And so it's like literally heating up health. And so, yeah, when Mars gets into people's six, I guess like a more negative side of Mars in the sixth, even though Mars loves being in the sixth. But Mars is also a malefic. And so it can do good things, but it's more prone to just being a jerk. um and so are oh that was the question that I wanted to ask you. Are you thinking about like possibly, applying for that position and like wanting to get promoted? Because I could see possibly that being a thing. um because you have Jupiter in your fourth. I would have to look more so into your chart to see if that's something that would be more of a possibility, because we don't know your annual perfections right now. And we wouldn't look at that right now, but um take a look at your annual perfections. If you're in a 10th house year, um the solar eclipse would definitely trigger that Jupiter, which could very much get you a promotion. Um, okay. Okay, congratulations. Okay, so it might very well like get you there because the third house can be like training, like some sort of like learning new skills or like job training, something that doesn't take a long time to learn. Like I'm not going like back to school like college, but like the third house is like trades and like smaller courses, like you get what I'm saying, like job trainings. Um, and so that's so like you could look for like a some sort of promotion possibly coming up like in the next 6 months after the solar eclipse happens. Um, yeah. Okay. So yeah, I say stay flexible, stay open, make sure you are budgeting, um, and hang in there. Your Saturn return is almost over. Um, okay. Ah, yeah, it's a lot of multitasking. A lot of multitasking. And I think that might be where the needing to balance um mental stress might come in. Um, I mean, because the third house is also language, like how we're talking and how we're communicating, even though the ninth house technically is like the learning of that. It all kind of ties into itself. But yeah, just making sure that you're not stretching yourself too thin while still staying flexible. And I think the way that you do that is by carving out, doing six house like things, like actually like organizing everything. Not to say that you cannot be spontaneous. Um, but I would just say organize when you are spontaneous. It sounds like the least fun thing ever, but like I have had to learn to do it. But I think like, the more structure the better, especially with that lunar eclipse in Virgo. I think that'll help with a lot of the chaos, like feeling a bit more grounded when that time does eventually come because you're under a lot of different changes, like transits that have to do with changes right now. Cries and unorganized. Just because your sixth house is empty does not mean that it's not being triggered. So your sixth house is ruled by the moon, and so your moon is in your first house, and so unfortunately, it is saying that you're unorganized. Unfortunately, it is. It is. It's just saying that you like spontaneity, and that's okay. And it's at an Aries degree, so you know, we all love we all love a little impulsivity. It's okay. It's just I think you just have to be a bit more intentional about getting organized or find what works for you the best. But yeah, essentially your all of that organized sixth house energy is being funneled into your first house, which your first house is essentially run by the sign that hates organization most. Not Aquarius doesn't hate organization. They just prefer not to feel boxed in, which I feel like organization is being boxed in. um, but yeah. Let me know if you have any questions. That is everything I have for your solar and lunar eclipse transits. But let me know if you have any questions before we move on to Katie. Josie, go ahead and type what you need to in the in the chat. Unfortunately, I can't hear anybody because my headphones died. So go ahead and type your question in the chat and I'll answer it. Mm. So I'm not familiar with Pholos. I'm assuming it's an asteroid, but I'm not familiar with that asteroid in particular. So I wouldn't be much help, unfortunately. Um, It can, depending on answering Josie's question, just for anybody that wanted to know. So she asked, uh, gotcha. Josie asked, did I say that the solar eclipse can have a positive effect on legal issues? Yes. If the solar eclipse is if essentially the Aries is falling in your ninth house, so you would have to look at your chart. If Aries is your ninth house and the solar eclipse is there, it could potentially be very positive when it comes to legal issues. If Aries is somewhere else, then it probably would not have anything to do with legal issues for you personally. But for that person, we were talking about like Aries being in their ninth house. And so, yes, it is a potential for sure. Okay. So we're going to move on to Katie. No problem. So we're going to move on to Katie, and this will be our last one for today. Uh, okay. Katie, I just want to make sure I have all of your information correct. Just to kind of review, I don't have my headphones on, so I can't hear you. And so if you want to let me know anything, just put it in the chat box and I will see it. Um, I have your information as October 30th, 1985 at 7:36. Is that I hate that it doesn't tell me AM or PM. I do believe you put AM. Okay, good. um, yes, okay, AM. Because I was like, I know that I put it in as AM, but I was like, why doesn't it tell me? So I would that when I go to confirm, it doesn't tell me. Um, yeah, it was like they have it as like the 24-hour clock, and then they have it as like the normal clock, like right above it. Um, how do I get one of the charts done? So you can go on any sort of we're wrapping up right now as far as like readings for today. So Katie's chart is going to be the last chart. But whenever I do another one of these in the future, you would just need to give me your information ahead of time, like before like the actual session starts. so that I can put you in the queue. And the information that I would need is your birth time, birth date, and birthplace. And then we would get you all set with that. And you'd be in the queue and you can get your reading done. Usually I do it around I do these around eclipse seasons. So this is the one for this season. So we probably will not do another one of these until uh Virgo season. Um yes. But yes. So you can use any app or just go on astroseek.com. There are a whole bunch of like websites that you can go to as well. That'll give you your chart as a whole. Okay, so Katie. Katie is a Scorpio rising. We have gotten so many people. I think almost every single person has had like eighth house or like Scorpio energy. We've had so many intense energies today in our chart readings. Okay, Scorpio rising, moon in Taurus, and then where is her sun at? Sun in Scorpio in the first house as well. So, um, we're gonna start off with the lunar eclipse in Virgo. So this is going to be in Katie's 11th house. The ruler of this lunar eclipse is going to be Mercury in Aries. That's going to be conjunct Venus retrograde, which is going to be in her sixth house. Mercury is going to be the ruler of not only her 11th house, but it's also going to be the ruler of her eighth house. We've got that eighth house energy again, loves creeping in there. And so when we're looking at Katie's lunar eclipse, energy that we can kind of look at. We're looking at shared resources. That's that eighth house energy, transformations, like deep emotional bonds, intimacy, taxes, other people's money. Katie, you might have heard this feel already about the eighth house. But Virgo, since it's your 11th house, is going to be representative of friendships. Virgo is an earth sign, and so it likes to pay attention to detail. It likes to plan for the future. It can also be about just kind of like when it does come to like 11th house things, it can be a lot about planning for long term goals that you might have and long term aspirations. And so when we kind of mosh all that together, it's talking about some sort of change in our long term goals or change in our social circle, change in our friendships as well, or some sort of change in finances or like change in support that we have from other people and possibly having to do some things on our own a little bit more. But that's what we're going to get more into. So the lunar eclipse is actually going to be sextile your natal Saturn. Saturn is the planet where we get a lot of limitation and kind of pushback. Um, Mercury is also there in Scorpio as well in your first house. Um, and so the lunar eclipse is going to be sextiling that, like those two planets. Um, so I like those energies together. Even though Saturn, I know, is not seen as like the most fun planet, it does really well with Virgo energy because it loves both of those like energies love structure. And so put together all of those planets like create a great plan for like putting sort of some put a yeah, putting together some sort of schedule and some sort of step by step plan together to how to achieve certain goals. Um, and those goals kind of just being supported as well as finding a really disciplined approach to self-improvement as well, because I think like we were talking about, Virgo can be about healing, but I like obviously that healing can come from improving some part of ourselves. Can Virgo be about being service oriented? Yeah, but I think if we're looking at a more personal level, it can be about how we're being of service to ourselves, not just to our friends. um uh it can also kind of be, I think, since there's a sextile from the 11th to the 1st, it can be a lot about how your appearance is changing, or like how your personal identity might change as well, or just kind of like a turning point as far as how you present yourself to others. And just really like taking the reins, because Saturn likes to take control of things. And so it's like, okay, I'm not relying on other people to get me to where I want to be. I am going to do it on my own. And I'm really just clocking in and zoning in on what I want to achieve. And I think as a Scorpio rising, that's already something that comes naturally to you anyway. Um, let's see. The lunar eclipse is also going to be trine your natal moon in Taurus in the 7th. So that's a lot of like emotional security and partnerships. The moon is like our emotional stuff, but the 7th house is our partnership. So it's emotional partnerships, or emotional security and partnerships, and just feeling supported, and just kind of feeling, feeling stable, or trying to improve that stability in relationships. Um, it can be about building stronger networks in our like social circles, but also trying to build a stronger relationship with people that we already have. So it's not just about expanding our friendship circles, but also just improving the ones that we already have and investing more time in those. um and that's kind of how that Virgo being of service to other people kind of comes in. The other thing that I did want to point out, is that we can see some changes in relationships as well. Lunar eclipses are about some sort of culmination of something. So when it's in the 11th house, you can lose friends, or you can purge certain dreams or aspirations and just say that doesn't work for me anymore. That's not something that I'm really interested in. Lunar eclipses have a tendency to have us let go of things more than like latch on to things. I mean, you can latch onto them, sure, but lunar eclipses like to have more of a tendency to like want us to let go of things because they no longer serve us. Um, gotcha. Yes. Um, the another thing, but yeah, so just be very mindful of, there is a possibility to have some friends either go away or just kind of fade away temporarily, or just like some friendships to just kind of fall apart because they haven't put in a lot of work. It's about reciprocity. I think anytime Saturn is involved, it wants to, Saturn always has like high expectations. And because Saturn is in your first house, it's going to expect your relationships to rise to the same, like, the same work level that you are investing in that other person. You want to see the other person returning that same thing to you. And so I think if the other person is not doing that, then you're going to see like some sort of rift when it comes to um, those relationships kind of falling apart, especially the more that we get into Aries season. Not even talking about just the solar return, or not solar return, solar eclipse in Aries, but especially when we hit that full moon in Libra. That full moon in Libra is going to test relationships. But it's also such a beautiful, like, full moon for finding the relationships that are meant to last for more of a long term thing. Um, uh, Mercury in Aries, like I said, is going to be the ruler of the eclipse. It is opposing your natal Venus in Libra in the 12th. So there can be like some, and this is an energy that we have not gotten to talk about. The 12th house is like where stuff likes to go and hide. Like I was talking about, the 8th house is where we go to hide, but the 8th house is kind of like where we go to like have our metamorphosis. I always think about the Hillary Duff song, the Hillary Duff album. When I like talk about that word. Um, sorry, my brain just went there. Anyway, yeah, so the 12th house is where we kind of go to hide, or like it's where hidden things are at. It's the thing, it's like where also we find like bedroom pleasures, as well as like where we go to isolate ourselves. It's where we find like spirituality and music and the things that are not tangible but still make us feel something. Um, but it can also be like isolation and the very heavy emotional things as well. And so when we look at that opposition between the ruler of this lunar eclipse, where we're already very emotion heavy, but we might be repressing some emotions against your natal Venus in the 12th, there may be like some hidden tensions related to like how you feel about yourself. There can be a lot of self doubt when it comes to like self worth or like feeling like you're not um and obviously that's not true, but like feeling like you're not lovable, like and honestly I'm gonna say it's partially Saturn's fault. Like Saturn isn't in your 12th house, but it's very close. um and sometimes Saturn can make us feel depressed. And because we have this lunar eclipse that's already um so sensitive, but it doesn't like to express its emotions. Um, Sometimes that's yeah, we can bottle up those feelings and we're not expressing those to other people, and that's I think like part of what we hide when we have that opposition is that we're literally not talking about how we don't feel lovable almost. And so, or the how we don't feel secure in certain partnerships or even financially, because Venus is finances too. And so it can be how we are processing loss or grieving certain things. Um, because the 12th house is also like where we find endings as well. So it can be synonymous with grief over a death, knock on wood. But it can definitely bring those things up too. And so there's a lot of like emotion when we're talking about the 12th house, especially with Venus being there. It can be like a loss, feeling like a loss of something that we really value, whether it's ourselves or something a bit more external. Um, it can also be like a subconscious, just like creative block. I think that's another way we could look at it. It's just you're not feeling extra creative at that time, or you're trying so hard to like make a creative project perfect that you put yourself in kind of like a slump as far as like being able to be inspired. I could see that being another manifestation. Um, but definitely when we're talking about Venus retrograde and not Mercury retrograde, Venus retrograde and Mercury and Aries coming together in Aries during this past full moon lunar eclipse that we just had last week. Um, there can be like a reassessing of relationships at work in particular. Um, and just really focusing in on like boundaries at work or like questioning if you should be getting paid more. Like lots of conversations around compensation, I think, can come up in your case. Like, you know, you're saying, okay, I've been given more responsibilities, but my pay has not gone up. And that's an issue for me. That is like very much that Venus retrograde conjunct Aries, Mercury in Aries. It's literally saying um, that you feel like you should be getting paid more for the work that or the responsibilities that you've been given. Um, you can also like reconsider like health and fitness routines. Um, and you may return, since Venus is retrograde, you may return to some sort of like old approach to fitness or like some sort of like beauty thing. Even if it's like, you know, like I don't know if you're somebody that wears makeup, but like sometimes during a Venus retrograde, some people that wear a lot of makeup will like go barefaced. Um, and that can be something that is, I think, also really fits with that as well, because Aries is um it's it's Aries is raw. And so it can be like literally going raw faced. And so um it could also be like a past work opportunity could reappear, or like a boss from an old job can call you back up and say, "Hey, we want to rehire you." Um, but I would really, really, really reassess before you say yes to it. Does it line up with where you want to go? Because you're already doing a lot of changing with this past lunar eclipse anyway. And so just taking time to ask yourself, does it line up with the goals that you have? If it does, cool. If not, then take the time to, grieve that, you know, job and say goodbye to it. Um, um, okay, is that all that I wanted to say about that lunar eclipse? Um, I think so. You have a comment. Hold on. Yes, the lunar eclipse was last week. Yes, but we are feeling that lunar eclipse for the next 6 months. You'll feel all eclipses for at least 6 months. So it's like the lovely part of eclipses is that you have a lot of time to work out what the eclipse is trying to essentially teach. But also, I think that's the not so great part is that if it's a harder lunar eclipse, then you're in that energy for a good minute. And so I guess that's the double-edged sword of it all. um but yeah, I think like workspace kind of like miscommunications or like people just not getting back to you can cause maybe some frustration or tension. I will say, just like I've told everybody else, because that Venus retrograde and Mercury are together, just being very mindful of words when you're when you're having conversations, especially surrounding like pay. um like to be assertive, not aggressive. Um, and then overworking and burning yourself out. Um, Virgo loves to burn itself out. I think it's just a masochist that way. So, because it loves to do all the things all at once. And being a Scorpio rising, I think sometimes there's a tendency to go over the top a little bit or to go to certain extremes. So it can be like all or nothing kind of attitude, but make sure that you are taking your time to, um, yeah, sometimes taking, just taking time to, assess what needs to be done, what is your job, what is not your job, because you do not need to take it all on. Um, Again, I think I was saying this earlier. If I didn't avoid like impulsively quitting a job, if you're frustrated, especially like with the amount of pay, just make sure you have a plan. Virgo loves a good plan. And with Mercury and Venus being together, there is a lot of room for, some sort of argument breaking out over pay or over responsibilities that are being given and you don't feel appreciated in particular, and then you just quit. So just avoid emotional, like just kind of like impulsively quitting jobs because some sort of argument or you don't feel like you're being appreciated enough. Make sure if you do impulsively quit, I'm not going to tell you not to quit, but just make sure you have a plan. So that way it's not impulsive anymore. You've been just plotting when you're going to quit, and then you can be dramatic and then just quit and walk out. And then other than that, just take time to really take care of yourself too. Um, let's see. Yes, yeah. So, but yeah, career and social circles are changing. Health and daily routines are changing. And I think that's definitely going to be something that's a bit more positive in light of all of this like Virgo lunar eclipse energy. And then emotional stability in relationships, I think will improve. Uh yeah, like that won't like those emotional relationships I think will come with like ups and downs. I think they might get a little bit turbulent as they're simultaneously getting better because you're going to be weeding out a lot of the people that just aren't supportive. Um to you and where you're trying to go in life. You're going to be facing hidden fears, like that 12th house energy is a monster. Like things that you didn't know that you possibly were um, hiding from. The 12th house has a way of bringing those things up. Um, and I think it's a great opportunity to explore the psyche and explore and heal yourself in that way, like from more and more emotional like space. Um, so yeah, just be open to new social circles, meeting new people. Take self-care precautions, or taking scheduling out time for self-care. Um, and yeah, don't overwork yourself. If you need to journal, any kind of Mercury like thing, I think is great for self care. Again, with that Venus retrograde and Mercury being together, journaling, um, talking to a trusted friend or just to vent, I think is really really helpful, especially with it being in Aries. Um, yeah, just like venting anger to somebody that you trust, um I think could be something that's really helpful, if not to like a therapist, or just finding that in like, I think the misconception with Virgo is sometimes that Virgo isn't spiritual or intuitive, and it's absolutely, Virgo is essentially Pisces that's just a little bit more grounded. And so Virgo it just likes to ground its spirituality. So it likes to have something physical, which is why I say like journaling, instead of just simply meditating. You can meditate, but I think it comes with like some sort of like order, like, if you get what I'm saying. Okay, so that is the lunar eclipse for you, Katie. And so we're gonna dive into the solar eclipse in Aries, which is coming up on April 8th. Um, Not April 8th. Why am I thinking? Because that's my friend's birthday. March 29th. um, okay. Thanks, Melissa. Have a good night. Okay, so the solar eclipse is going to be opposing your natal Mars in Libra in your 12th. So we have a return of that 12th house energy. So there's more like a push-pull kind of dynamic between action and hesitation. Um, and I think, honestly, I don't think that's bad. Like we were saying, like acting impulsively can sometimes get you in trouble. But you might feel just very torn between taking a risk and um, putting yourself out there, especially when it comes to work, um, and just kind of lingering in your own fears. So I think with like essentially getting out of your own comfort zone is becomes the issue. Um, and wondering if you're overthinking certain things, but using overthinking as a reason to not step out of that comfort zone. Because Scorpio, I think, can be very good at stepping out of their comfort zone, but I don't think that Scorpio risings like to step out of the comfort zone. They can be very good at it because I think Scorpio is great at transforming and almost being like a secondary chameleon. But I think if they are given the choice, then they're like, no, thank you. I would rather do what I think works. And so yeah, I think that there can be like that tension, that internal tension between certain fears that you might have about like the unknown specifically, and just doing something different because you need something different. Um, yeah. And so uh the ruler of that solar eclipse in Aries is going to be in your sixth house. Um, and so we're looking at work routines, health, and it's also going to be, Mars is also going to be the ruler of your first house as well. And so we're looking at that solar eclipse. Actually, ooh, it opposes your natal Mars. Oh, wait, we already talked about that. Um, it's opposing your natal Venus in Libra. And so we have potential, we have both like that Mars energy and Venus energy being opposed there. Um, and so self-care and responsibilities, again, we're getting a lot of the same themes that we were getting for the lunar eclipse in Virgo. So balancing obligations with kind of like your own personal wants and desires, and like how you want to express yourself. And that there can be like a lot of like tension between those two things. Um, We can also see the solar eclipse is sextiling your natal Jupiter in Aquarius in the fourth. So we can see a lot of growth and expansion, like in the home family, like we were talking about this before, like the fourth house is like everything behind closed doors. So it's privacy. So even if nobody is announcing some sort of pregnancy in your home, this can have to do with possibly like you moving into a new space or you, um, decorating the home or do like moving around furniture. Hold on. Um, are you trying to get pregnant? Ah, okay. Ooh, I like this. I wonder. I think this is actually really good energy for you to get pregnant. I like it might take some time because I mean eclipses they always take some time, but I do like this energy for pregnancy, if I'm being completely honest with you. Like, because it's even though we have that opposition to Venus, and that's why I say it's also going to take some time because it's up against the natal Mars and natal Venus. So it's against like what we want and what we're actively trying to get, like to go after. It doesn't mean that it can't happen. It means that it needs the right conditions. So the more that I think that you can focus on relaxing, getting your mind into a more peaceful space, the more successful you'll probably be at getting pregnant. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I imagine that that's with anything that you're trying to achieve, is the more calm that you are, the more that things are able to just kind of flow in um, and like manifest. Because stress can be like a just bad on the body in general, but bad on our vibration too. Um, let's see. Yes. Um, and also, more than anything, like I said, it is that Jupiter is the planet of pregnancy. And when we're talking about the fourth house, I think the only other better placement for a solar eclipse creating a baby might be if Jupiter were in the fifth. But the fourth house is good too. Like I think it's just as good because I'm like it's where we have domestic, where we have all the domestic stuff at, and where we have family at. And so the solar eclipse making a positive aspect to your natal Jupiter can be about like since it's an Aquarius, it's about like a surprise pregnancy or like finding out in a surprising way that you're pregnant. Um, so yeah, growth and expansion in the family can happen for sure. And so I am keeping my fingers crossed for you, um, as well as just kind of making sure that all the security financially is there. I think that's the big one as well, because the fourth house can be about like the actual home and the real estate and the money that it takes to have that home working and functioning correctly. The solar eclipse is squaring your natal Neptune and Capricorn in the third, though. And so, again, this is a lot of mental stuff. And so there can be like confusion and miscommunication regarding work, learning. So, again, I'm going to say don't let people stress you out. Keep focused on your own goals. That's what the solar eclipse in Aries is so much about. It's focusing on what you are after. Aries is you. It is yourself. It is what do I want? And it doesn't always have to be like sound like it doesn't like always have to be like that being selfish is negative. It's just a fact of the matter that we have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of anybody else. And so um we have that happening in your third, and so just be aware of that. There can be a lot of miscommunications, and I think I was saying this for another person earlier, is that you'll feel this as well going into April because Neptune is about to head into um, Aries on the 30th. And Mercury will, when it goes direct, it'll go back into Aries and it has to cross Neptune. And you're going to find that a lot of people are having miscommunications. It's kind of like Mercury retrograde all over again. Be very careful about also dropping your phone in the water. That transit, I feel like everybody's phone needs to just be like in a plastic bag. Or like electronics being damaged by water or like wet things, because it doesn't even have to be water in particular. It can be like coffee being spilled on like a tablet. So yeah, then you have your solar eclipse trine natal Uranus and Sagittarius in your second. So some sort of breakthrough regarding finances, or even like just self-worth. So finally breaking out of possibly, any sort of like depression, or like feeling like, you have kind of, become a bit more secure in how you feel about yourself, whether it be like physically or just kind of emotionally, um, or just feeling a bit more supported by the people around you. I think that could also be a very second house thing, especially with Uranus there, because Uranus is your friends. Um, so then, oh, sorry. I was like, people are talking outside my window. And I was like, what is that? Um, so some opportunities we can see, career or health breakthroughs, like fingers crossed. That means some sort of pregnancy. And then home and family stability are improving. So even if things start to feel like they are unstable, I think like with the lunar eclipse, I think the Aries eclipse is like where we start to see a lot of forward movement into stability, because after Aries comes Taurus, which is like stabilization of that new beginning that comes in Aries. And so even if it's just like the beginning of the things starting, I think that those things continue and they create a lot of stability as well. Um, the I want to kind of go back to that second house trine for a second, that solar eclipse trine your natal Uranus, that can be like actually making a lot of money in unconventional ways. So, like, I've talked to everybody about side hustles. I think except for Alex, I think I've talked to everybody about side hustles. If you have a side hustle with that aspect to your solar return, all right, not solar return. Why do I keep saying solar return? Solar eclipse. If you have a side hustle, um, you have Uranus in Sagittarius in a second. That is making money in some sort of unconventional way. Sagittarius can be like teaching. Sagittarius is a guru. And so when I think about Sagittarius, I think about like if you're not like teaching some sort of like college class or like some sort of like spiritual class or something like that, I think about like yoga or like horseback riding or what else? Archery. All of those are like Sagittarius like things. Another Sagittarius thing could maybe be like something that's a bit more like political, like a political class. Um, yeah, like something that's very like Jupiter based. So again, I'm gonna come back to like spirituality or like some sort of like metaphysical class, like with crystals or something like that. Hold on, got another. Aha. Okay. Your main side hustle is teaching psychology 101. Perfect. Yes. Um, lean into that. I feel like I'm like the spokesperson this time around for like telling everybody go after your side hustle. Like, but I think it's kind of like where we're at right now with the energies in just in this country in general. So pretty sure I think right now we all need a side hustle. um yes, okay, yes. I think you could actually like really start to see that happening. So continue to lean into that, and I think you'll find that that actually is something that happens. Um, okay, so just wrapping up here. Um, yeah, because I think like Uranus can be like breakthroughs and where we find freedom, and so the second house is finances, and so it can be like financial freedom is found by teaching or found by some sort of unconventional side hustle. But in your case, it would be something very like Sagittarius or like expansive, like like cultural based or like something that's a bit more philosophical like psychology. And so I think that that's definitely something that could be very lucrative. Some challenges, just to kind of wrap this up, would be work-life balance. It might feel like a very daunting task. Just make sure that you are following all those Virgo like rules. I think it's the best way to meet the solar return in Aries, solar eclipse in Aries, um, is by scheduling things out. You don't have to be rigid or anything like that, but like creating like at least a very loose schedule to just kind of relax so that you're not stressed 24/7 because you very might well feel like with both of these eclipses that you are constantly running all the time. That's very much the same, like a common thing that I can say for both of these eclipses is that both of these eclipses are extremely busy as far as energy goes. Um, because the solar eclipse is trining or sextiling the Jupiter in Gemini, and the lunar eclipse squared Jupiter in Gemini. So there's a lot of scheduling things that are going on. Things are moving extremely fast. Um, Hidden fears and self-sabotaging. The 12th house can be the self-sabotaging part. And so we were talking about that earlier. Feeling tension around like going ahead and making a big jump just because you're afraid of what may or may not happen or not knowing where you're stepping. Like I said, just do the Virgo thing of researching things first and go ahead and assess. Is it that you, is it truly that this could go wrong? Or is it just that you're uncomfortable with taking that step? If the answer is that you're just uncomfortable with taking the step and you've researched it and logically it's fine, go ahead and just jump. But yeah, so then we can see, like we said, some confusion around communication and learning. So yeah, just establish a daily structure, embrace financial and career like reevaluations and rebudgeting and shifts with an open mind. Um, don't with the 12th house being involved, make sure that you're not assuming as well as like if you need to say that to other people when you're communicating with them, because other people might also be the people doing like the assuming of things. Don't be afraid to call them out on, hey, I didn't say that. Please don't put words in my mouth. That's an assumption that you made. Calling them out on that strategically. um I think that's, definitely something that can be very much Aries, setting boundaries in a kind and assertive way. And then just trust in your own growth and healing process. Even if it's not taking the amount of time that you feel like it should be taking, you can't rush those kinds of things. So, yeah, I think like just kind of trust in the process is another one. And so that is your lunar eclipse and solar eclipse reading, Katie. Let me know if you have any questions. But other than that, that is all we have time for today. Thank you guys for hanging out with me for almost 3 hours. My goodness, you guys are the MVPs. Like, no problem. Um, but yeah, I will probably do one of these like in the fall. Um, we will see because I know that the next few months, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, the next few months is insane. So we will see where I'm at, but I'll still be here. But like the fall, we have, so to just kind of like put things into perspective, we have Neptune moving into Aries on the 30th of this month. Then we have Saturn moving into Aries in on like May 25th of next month. And then in June, Jupiter is moving into Cancer. And then the month after that, Uranus is moving into Gemini. And so like all of the main like some of the planets that make the so all of the planets that make things shift on a very cosmic collective level are moving signs. And I will say that Saturn does not like being in Aries. So while it's only going to be in Aries for a little bit this year, it will go back into Pisces and then move back into Aries permanently in March of next year. It does not like being in Aries. And so, one thing I will give you a little sneak peek of is that May is going to be huge as far as everybody reassessing their budget and what they can afford. Um, I do very much wonder if we're going to be shifting to some sort of new form of currency. Um, I don't know much about crypto, but I do wonder if that's going to start being pushed even more. Um, yes. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm like, interesting. But yeah, May is going to be a very big financial shift kind of month. And it's partially because of Saturn going into Aries. Um, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more, um, what is that? Um, like government crackdowns on like censorship. There we go. And kind of moving a bit more, hopefully not moving backwards, but again, Saturn is limitation, Aries is like beginnings, and so it's literally like limitations on beginnings. And so I do wonder how that will all play out. I am always hopeful though that it'll turn out better than we think it will. But that is just like a little sneak peek of May, because it's definitely going to be a lot of big shifts moving forward and going into the summer. Summer is going to be a crazy time to be alive. What a time to be alive. But yeah, other than that, I have rambled quite a bit. And we don't have any more questions. So other than that, I will talk to you guys next time. I do believe we are having class next Sunday, if I am not mistaken. I have to double check, but I do believe we are having class next Sunday. Um, okay. Mm, mm, okay. Robin, yeah. I could see it. I could see it. I could totally see it. If I'm being completely honest, I am loving how Venus retrograde has been absolutely wrecking Elon. I've been loving it. I've been and so I hate that. I almost hate that Venus is gonna have to go retro. I'm gonna have to go direct at some point. Um, because I've been looking at his chart. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Like, but yeah. So, um, yeah, and so yeah. Anyway, so I think we're having class. I have to double check my schedule, but I do believe we're having class next Sunday, not Saturday. And we will be continuing on with um it's on Saturday. Okay, so it should be on Sunday, not Saturday, because I will not be able to make it on Saturday. So I'm saying that it's going to be on Sunday. But we'll be continuing on with astrology 2. Anybody that wants to come to astrology 2, you are welcome to come, even if you didn't attend astrology 1. I always say that the best way to learn astrology is by like immersive learning. Essentially, it's the same way that you learn a language, because in part astrology is its own language. So even if you don't understand it right away, the more that you listen to astrology, the more that it starts to make sense. And you can start to fill in the blanks the more that you listen to it. And so I do encourage anybody to come, even if it makes absolutely no sense. I will be teaching the beginner course again this year, probably in the fall. If I'm just guesstimating, but it'll probably come back. I'll probably come back to doing the beginner course in the fall. But other than that, I will talk to you guys next week. All right, everybody. I will see you next time. Okay. Josie. So I will put a announcement in the Discord. I have not opened my books back up to doing private sessions with people yet. But I will be opening that back up as in April, when Venus is done having a rage fit. And so that'll I'll put that announcement when the my website is back up and my books are back open. I will put that in the Discord. And so just keep an eye on that because then you can just book through my website if you don't want to wait until fall. But yeah, other than that, I will talk to everybody later. Bye.